Last one, let's go. If you haven't watched the previous two videos in the series, I highly recommend that. In the first one, I go over all the rules and how the videos work, as well as discussing all of these brands. And in the second one, I discuss all of these brands. So if you want to hear that and see that, go into those videos and then come back to this one. If you have watched those videos, thank you. I appreciate that a lot. So let's kick off our finale by talking about our last athletic brand, Enperry. Enperry is definitely the most expensive athletic brand out of all of them, at least going by average. Not like there's much competition since 2 out of the 4 others are dead last, but the sentiment still rings true. Inky, I am so tired. Enperry is like the Nike of Splatoon. Literally, their shoes are parodies of Jordans. In fact, looking at their shoes, it's clear they're pretty expensive. In fact, creating the most expensive shoes in the game, being the red and white Squid Kid 5s. However, they don't have a lot of shoes, so their total only ranks 7th out of 15. While on average, a pair of Enperry shoes costs about 6,886.67 G and ranks 4th. Now, looking at the facts and stats, one would call Enperry just a brand that has some pretty expensive shoes, but nothing like too wild since they only rank 4th after all. But in my heart, I would like to call Enperry the king of shoe wear. See, I've been trying to make these videos for quite a while now, about 2 seasons in fact, so this is my 3rd attempt trying to get these videos out. However, a benefit is that I have the stats from Sizzle Season and Drizzle Season 2023. And in Sizzle Season 2023, Enperry's shoe average was 9,730 G, which put them well into 1st place in the category. So what happened? How did Enperry go from top of the chart to being over 1,000 G behind 3rd place? Well, in Drizzle Season 2023, Enperry obtained their cheapest shoes ever, the Squid Kid 3s. With both set at 1,200 G, they were easily enough to drag Enperry down. A tragedy. Maybe they'll add more Enperry shoes in later seasons to help restore them to their rightful place, or maybe it'll do even more damage. Other than that, Enperry does alright in the other categories, at least in average. In total, not as well, since Enperry just doesn't have a lot of gear. In fact, it has the least amount of gear out of any brand. But all that really does is make its averages higher, doesn't it? Anyways, in a recap summary thing, Enperry makes 16 pieces of gear, and buying them all will cost 102,470 G and ranks 10th, while they rank 4th with an average price of 6,438 G. 0.38 G. Their most expensive are the red and white Squid Kid 5s at 12,800 G, and the cheapest is a 3-way tie between the Squid Kid 3s and the FC Albacore, both at 1,200 G. Fun fact, the FC Albacore shirt used to be a Takaraka shirt, with their logo still being visible on the shirt. I have no clue why they changed it, other than just wanting to give Enperry a soccer jersey, maybe to show like the changing of a sponsor or something, but they didn't change the shirt's design, so what? I know, but Enperry as a brand was better in Splatoon 2. They had more stuff, was closer to its theme, and just generally stuck more to its brand as a sportswear brand. Maybe they'll change it in the coming seasons, but I've also been saying this for 3 seasons now. Now we get on to a brand that I personally enjoy very much. The OG expensive brand, the king of total shoe wear, the Berg Rockin' brand, is Rockenberg. I love Rockenberg, if it isn't obvious by my choice of wear. The leather and western style is amazingly executed and has been a staple of Splatoon for some time now. They're also 2/3 of that skull mask, black leather jacket, Punk Knights combo that I know you all love. They were the expensive brand before the new brands came along with their fancy high prices, but it's not like they're getting left behind, as the only categories they don't stand out in are the clothing categories, and even then, they are in dead last, with a 12th in total and a 9th in average. But their shoes and headgear are where it truly gets interesting. Let's start with the headgear. Now, Rockenberg used to absolutely dominate the average headgear category, doing with headgear what Enperry did with its shoes, as it only had 3 headgears, all of which were 11,000 or more, obviously winning the average category with an average of 12,000 G. Unfortunately, in a similar vein to Enperry, in the most recent season they added the Flounder Flap Cap and the Clue Detecting Cap at 9,000 and 5,000 G respectively. Obviously not cheap, but when everything was well over 10,000, anything under it will hurt it significantly. Rockenberg's new total is an extremely clean 50,000 G, ranking at 4th, and dividing it by an equally clean 5 will put it at a very polished 10,000 G on average, putting it in 2nd. Bearzushi takes the role instead, as in the same season it gained the vintage biker cap, priced higher than its other two headgears, and put Bearzushi in the exact same position as Rockenberg once was. A shame, but let's discuss Rockenberg's shoes now. Now, I called Enperry the king of shoe wear, but that was only in my head. In actuality, that title has to go to Rockenberg. Rockenberg makes a bunch of boots. Like a lot of boots. 23 pairs of shoes, in fact. Unsurprisingly, the most out of any brand, and buying them all would cost 117,150 G. Obviously first place again. However, like Forge, this number is still mostly from quantity, but there is absolutely a fair share of quality in there, ranking 5th in the average shoe wear category. Unlike Forge, Rockenberg does have a wider variety of shoes, which makes Rockenberg's shoe total and average lower than Forge's headgear prices. But if you watch the video that Forge was in, which you should, you would recognize that Rockenberg is ranked higher than Forge is in their respective average categories, but that's just because headgear is a lot more competitive than shoes. But yeah, Rockenberg, the Forge of shoes, just not in style. No, their style is much better than Forge's. And as a summary, Rockenberg makes the most amount of gear out of any brand, that being 37 pieces of gear, and buying them all will cost you 208,350 G, ranking Rockenberg at 2nd place. On average, a piece of Rockenberg gear costs 5,631.08 G, and ranks 6th. The cheapest is a 5-way tie between these gears at 800 G, and the most expensive is the Howdy Hat at 13,000 G, and it's also the most expensive headgear in Splatoon 3, and the most expensive gear in Splatoon 3. I do imagine that the statistic will change soon, since they will probably be adding the pullover coat to Splatoon 3. I don't know when, I just know that they will. But that's Rockenberg. Like I said, one of my favorite brands. I think the whole, rustic European style is extremely appealing. And what they lack in clothing, they more than make up for in shoes and headgear. It's especially nice to see them hang in there, as the new brands only get more and more expensive and start the price higher than the OGs. There goes Rockenberg, the Berg Rocken brand. Before we get to our last brand that we will discuss, let's discuss a brand that we all know and love. The punk rock and rebellion starting gear stealing brand, it's Annaki. Here's a fun fact. Since the first scripts for these videos went in alphabetical order, I would always talk about Annaki first. And when I talk about Annaki, my sanity would be fully intact, and I'd actually be critical about the brand and explore what the brand would mean in universe, and go over all the nuances of their pricing and statistics and their most popular gear, and I'd be having fun with it, not knowing I'd soon be 6 brands deep into saying the same stuff over and over again, and I would not be having fun. But now I am having fun, because I'm only discussing what is important about the brand. Annaki is the rebel brand, the punk brand, the hot topic brand. Maybe, I don't know, I've only been in a hot topic once, and I got this pair of Kirby socks that now have holes in them. They don't play by the rules and stole gear from other brands before Embers made it cool. It's actually worth noting that we've only seen them stealing from rich brands that make the expensive stuff, like Rockenberg and Bearzushi, 2 brands that, as we've discussed, cost a pretty penny. Annaki does lower the price of their vandalized versions pretty drastically too, which I think is pretty funny. Or would be if Annaki themselves weren't so gosh darn expensive. The lowest Annaki ranks is 14th in one category, but after that it's 8th in another. My point is that Annaki comes in either 2nd or 3rd in 4 out of 8 categories, 3 of which are averages, 2 seconds and 2 thirds. A record that I believe is only outdone by 2 other brands, Bearzushi, which takes 1 first, 3 seconds, and a third, and another mystery brand that you have no way of deducing at all, that somehow gets a record even better than this. And once I explain that brand stats, it'll make sense as to why so few brands are able to achieve good records. But we're talking about Annaki, not the mystery brand that you can't figure out at all. Annaki's only shortcomings are in headgear, which makes sense. It only makes 4 pieces of headgear, of which have extremely varied pricings, managing to have a leap of about 3,000 to 4,000 G in between headgear prices. But in those headgears, for some reason, the Annaki beret costs more than the Annaki beret and glasses. I have no idea why. Probably because the beret is cheaper than the other beret and the glasses don't make up the cost, but those are some pretty fancy glasses. However, Annaki excels in shoes, at least in averages, not as much in total. The Annaki strappy sandals at 899 990G are the only thing holding Annaki back from being first place in the average shoe price category, above even Enperry's Sizzle season average shoe price. This is because the next cheapest Annaki shoe after this is 8,880G. Annaki does not mess around with its shoes, and its clothing is all pretty up there in pricing too, as its cheapest clothing is 4,000G, and it's second place in both total and average clothing price categories. Of course, it's beaten out in both categories by a mystery brand, but we'll get there when we get there. As an Annaki summary, the brand makes 21 pieces of gear, and buying them all would cost 149,045G, which ranks them at 6th place. On average, a piece of Annaki gear costs 7,097.38G, which would rank them at 3rd. Annaki's most expensive gear is not the Annaki anchored coat because that's a catalog unlock, you silly Billy. So the actual one is the Annaki beret at 11,500G. The cheapest are the Annaki charms at 777G. Overall, Annaki is definitely living up to the post-Splatoon 1 brands are all pretty expensive stereotype pretty well, since only 3 of its gears are under 4,000. But I don't blame it, because those clothes look cool, dagnabbit. It's honestly a miracle that Annaki wasn't made for Splatoon 3, because its attitude and style would fit right in with the Anarchy themes in Splatsville. But perhaps Annapolis needed a reminder that stealing is okay sometimes. And with that out of the way, let's talk about the big brand to wipe away them all. The iconic brand whose gear can be spotted from a mile away. The mystery brand who you could have never figured out until this very moment when I am telling you. Toni friggin' Kensa. Toni Kensa. What else do I have to say? I can honestly end the segment here and cut to the video summary and outro. We all know him, some of us love him. It's got the black and white colors with an accent of red that any Splatoon player worth anything could recognize like the back of their hand. And it also costs a lot of money. Toni Kensa blows the competition away with an astounding 5 first place wins out of 8 categories. And it's not like it does horribly in the other categories, no. Its lowest ranking is 6th place. Toni Kensa is the most expensive brand for both total and average clothing, with a total price of 116,630G and an average price of 9,719.17G, which is a pattern that we haven't seen until now. If you remember, although Forge and Rockenberg won total headgear and shoe prices, they both took a seat at about 1/3 of the way down on the list on average, and vice versa for Berezushi, having a 1st place in average headgear, yet a 7th place in total. I don't mention the vice versa for shoes because whoop-de-doo, look who has the 1st place average in shoes. It's Toni Kensa, and they're 4th place for total shoe price too, which is insane because they only have 6 pairs of shoes. For comparison, 3rd place has 16th and 5th place has 10. But back to their clothing, TK is an anomaly when it comes to winning total clothing because it doesn't make the most amount of clothing, unlike the other two. We've already established that title already belongs to Squid Force, and it's not even 2nd place. It's tied with 3 other brands for 5th place. So that 1st place has to come from quality, which funnily enough embodies why all of Toni Kensa is so expensive. To step back and look at TK as a whole, the cheapest gear item is the Toni Kensa goggles at 200G, but after that it's the Squid Beak shield at 4,000, and after 4 other pieces of gear in the upper 4,000 range, it jumps to 8,800G and only goes higher up from there until you hit 12,800G with both the Tinner Clinger earring and the Dark Bomber jacket. That is 6 out of 24 pieces of gear that cost less than 5,000. No, less than 8,000 actually. TK doesn't make a lot of gear, far from that, but it only helps them even more to have 5 first places out of 8. Toni Kensa's overall gear cost is 213,970G, and on average, a piece of Toni Kensa gear would cost 8,915.41G, both of which are clear first places. And for those wondering, that average gear cost is almost 1,000G ahead of 2nd place. I've said this a couple times in the past, but TK truly doesn't come to mess around. It came to win. And since I have nowhere else to put this comment, my one crack hope for side order is that Toni Kensa will appear in it. I don't care how, preferably as a villain, but I'll take anything really. And that's it. All 18 brands done and discussed. Some were more statistics heavy than others, some were more about their in-universe impact, mostly because they just didn't have a lot to talk about numbers-wise. But before we conclude though, let's do an overall summary, although I will say it is kind of boring, so you can skip ahead if you wanted to. But here we go. As of Chill Season 2023, there are 483 pieces of buyable or catalog unlockable gear in-game from these 18 brands. Buying them all will cost you 2,144,383G, presuming that you were somehow able to buy the catalog unlockables before obtaining them. And thus, on average, a piece of gear costs 4,439.72G, the price of about a 1-star gear item. For average gear price ranking, places 1st through 4th all had average prices that would be a 2-star item, as the cutoff is anything above 6,000. Everything placed below that would be rated as a 1-star, as the cutoff for that is anything under 1,500 G, which is really good because I would be really disappointed if a brand managed to be below that. But also Squid Force and Zinc came real close to that line, so which is expected of them, honestly. For totals, the brand with the highest headgear total was Forge with 148,290 G, while the lowest was Zinc with 2,400 G. Clothing-wise, the highest is Toni Kensa with 116,630 G, while the lowest is Scallop with 18,650 G. And for shoes, it's Rockenberg at the highest with 117,150 G, and the lowest, without not making any shoes at all, is Firefin at 5,760 G. And overall, it's Toni Kensa at the top with 213,970 G, and the bottom, it's Squid Force with 39,355 G. And for averages, the top headgear brand is Bearzushi at 10,966.67 G, and at the bottom it's Zinc with 400 G. Clothing goes to Toni Kensa at the top with 9,719.17 G, and Scallop at the bottom with 1,546.67 G. And for shoes, it's once again Toni Kensa with the highest at 9,106.67 G, and Crack-On at the lowest with 916.67 G. There's almost an entire order of magnitude between those. And for overalls, oh my god, is that Toni Kensa in the top spot again? It is TK with an average price of 8,915.41 G. And at the bottom, in its rightful place, it's Squid Force with a price of 1,513.65 G. Our most expensive headgear is Rockenberg's Howdy Hat at 13,000 G, and the cheapest is Zinc's Swim Goggles at 100 G, which are also both the most expensive and cheapest gear items in the game. The most expensive clothing is a tie between Rockenberg's White Inky Rider and Toni Kensa's Dark Bomber Jacket at 12,800 G, and the cheapest is a 6-way tie between the Basic Tee, the Octo Squid Tandem Tee, the Rainy Day Tee, the Sunny Day Tee, the Tri-Octo Tee, and the Tri-Squid Tee, all at 300 G. That is a lot of tees. And for shoes, the most expensive are Enperry's Red and White Skid Kid 5s at 12,800 G, and the cheapest are Embers' Squid Bone Unslips at 280 G. But they are catalog unlocked, so we'll go one up to Zekko's Black Flip Flops and Crack-On's Red Slip-Ons, both at 300 G. There's a couple little bonus facts just for you. One, the top 3 spots of total gear prices are held by the brands who won total prices in the individual categories. And 2, did you know that there's only 4 pieces of Splatoon 3 gear that are in the 6,000 range, and they're all clothing? 2 of them are even worn by promo characters, so there's just a little bonus thing for you. And we're done. Actually, I don't believe I have anything more to say other than just thank you. Thank you for watching these videos. These are the first I've done where I've actually put proper research into the stuff I'm talking about, and are for my first non-shorts that are informative about Splatoon. These have gone through like mini iterations, so I'm glad that I should be able to get these out hopefully before January is over. I enjoyed getting to explore what made each brand special and different from one another, and I had a lot of fun with it. I did do a final thing after drafting the script where I took each brand's rankings and then took an average of those, so if you want to see me talk about those, I may make a short video about it in the future. I should have the link to all the spreadsheets I made for Sizzle, Drizzle, and Chill Season 2023 in the description, as well as a link to the script of this video for those who need it for some reason. As for other Splatoon stuff, I want to do stage deep dives, so just go into the tiny details of Splatoon stages. Not like competitive and layout-wise, but like decoration-wise. I think that would be very fun. And also, I'd like to talk more about the in-game presence of brands, since there's a lot more to mention there, besides just how they price their items. Aside from that, though, I might do things for like other games. Like, I have a Pokemon idea. That would be pretty fun. I'll continue posting clips because that's why a lot of people subscribe, and I do stream sometimes, so if you want to stick around for one of those to catch me, then you could. But other than that, thanks a lot for watching, and I hope that you have a nice day.